Hello everyone, this is Mo Allen with another race analysis video. In this race, I am riding the Stage 3 of the Off the MAAP group ride series. So it's technically a group ride, all category, Zwift Score 0 to 1000, but often these rides are very spicy up at front to the point where you can race them. So that's what we, my coach and the athletes that he coached, we often use some of these group rides, including the Tour of Watopia, as opportunities to race. So that's what I'll be doing today. You can see these rides get a large number of participants, often over 300. This one has 200 at this point. So here we go at the start. I was actually surprised that there wasn't a big push at the front. Like, me being out front here was surprising, even if only for a second or two. Kind of indicative of how the rest of the race went. It wasn't necessarily like a cracking front group. I don't know, I don't run like the sauce add-on to know how many people are in the group, so I'm limited to, and I didn't click around the rider list or change the view, so I didn't actually know how many people were in the group that we were in. It could have been just a couple more than what I see on the screen, or it could have been double or triple that. I'm not actually sure how big the front group actually was. But anyway, my strategy for this ride, as always when I do races, is to try to stay with the front group. The group rides are raced a little bit differently because they're all category. You never know who's in the front group. There could be A+, there could be C or D riders, and everyone in between. So, interestingly here, you can see one rider has a different race kit on, which may be a bug. I'm assuming that there's one rider without the ride assigned kit on. And we'll speaking of bugs, let's get into it. So just quickly, this ride, the profile is on the Power to the Portal route, but in addition to that, it is the Old Wullunga Hill climb from the climbing portal. I say in addition, I actually have never seen the Power to the Portal route before. So it may be that Power to the Portal routes, this would make sense, are always Power to the Portal plus some portal climb. I'm not sure, but this ride is odd. So I watched my recon for this. It's odd in terms of the way you can track it. I mean, my recon for this was to watch someone else on YouTube ride this ride. So I watched their entire ride. So I knew what to expect. And I noticed this same oddity on their ride that's occurring in mine, which is if you look at the top center where it says lap 1 of 1, and then it has the gray bar with some of it in blue, going towards the finish line, the checkered flag to the right, that is the distance meter, right? So the white line is what's called the lead-in. It's the part of the ride before the actual route starts to get out of the pen and get to where the racing pen, the starting pen, and get to where the route starts. And the rest in gray is the distance you have to complete. So what's different for this ride that I don't think I've ever seen before since they introduced this capability of tracking the route in this way is to the right of that checkered flag, there is often another piece of information. I'm actually forgetting what it is. I guess it's just the distance. Like, I have my distance set to kilometers and meters, so I think it would be the distance in kilometers completed, either completed or left. I think it's the distance left, right? Because the different distance completed is up at the top there. So I noticed this in the ride that I watched on YouTube as well, where it was odd that that wasn't there. And I just assumed this was some sort of special like route that was created and isn't yet like fully onboarded into the Zwift system or something. Potentially it's a bug. We'll talk a lot about bugs at the end of this ride. You'll see what happens. That's a little unfortunate. I still got a good ride in, but in terms of getting credit towards the off the map, that didn't quite work out. Not because of any of my own doing, but so yeah, it's interesting why that isn't there. The other part of this that's interesting is the mini map on the top right, where at the bottom of that mini map where it says power to the portal, 1 of 1, and has the distance 14.7 kilometers. Above that, you can see a black silhouetted profile of the route. The green part is the part that I have completed. The little red balloon is where I currently am, and the black is what's left to complete. That mini-map does not include the finishing climb, which I assume is part of the reason why the distance isn't showing in the distance meter. I'm not exactly sure. At this point, I wasn't paying too much attention to it because, again, I had seen it already and I didn't think it would be any issue. So here we can see we're 6 minutes in, 305 watt average so far. A little bit of a gap to a couple riders off the front, but my strategy for this, getting back to not knowing who's in front of the race, is to stay with the front group for as long as I can, unless a couple of things happen. One of them is happening now. If 1 or 2 riders get off the front, or a small number of riders, small is a not definitive number, depends on the size of the group and the dynamics and the point at the race that we're in. But if a small number of riders, like 2 or 3, as is off the front right now, get off the front, then I do not chase that. I stay with the group. You know, this is supposed to be 18.5 kilometers. And actually, to be honest with you, I don't remember what the finishing distance I had was, but I'm not sure now if that stated 18.5 kilometers that's stated in the description on the Zwift Companion event includes the portal or it doesn't. The other odd thing about this is that if you look at the Zwift Companion event, it says the route description is not available or something like that. I think route description not available, even though it has like a route distance and elevation. And the stated elevation was 102 meters, so 300 feet. But anyway, here we are, 8 minutes in, trying to stay with the front here. It goes off and on, sort of in waves of staying with the front. I'm never trying to meaning the power output goes up and down, staying with the front. I'm never trying to be at the front of the front group, but I'm also never trying to be too far back, so that in case any moves that I do want to try to cover happen in the front, I don't have to surge from the back to cover them. So kind of middle back is where, last third of the group, if I can muster it and things aren't too surging too much up front. I've seen people that I envy that they can do this, very high level riders, objectively, will often be really far back in a big group. Like, I'm talking A riders from watching them stream will be really far back in a group, and I'm always really envious of how well they're able to gauge when they can be that far back and what the group will do and things like this. I'm not there yet, so I need to be closer to the front in a group this big. Part of it is just all the avatar bodies up there. It's sometimes difficult to, it might be too late before you realize that someone's off the front. The rider names that come up in those black sort of overlays above the riders will obscure the front of the group. So I like to stay sort of close to the front if I can. So this route, we're going to the villas now. We're going to make a left down towards the volcano, and besides the climb at the end, the first challenge of this, the other and first challenge of this ride is the Jarvis KOM reverse. So I knew I wanted to be with the, I'd planned to be with the group until that KOM and then assess whether or not I could stay with the group up that KOM. It's it's a relatively short climb, but given that shortness, I know that, again, if there's sufficiently highly categorized riders at the front, that they might just push way too hard up that climb for me to want to try to stay with them. So here I'm just preparing for the eventual left turn into Jarvis, and I'm trying to hold with the group up that Jarvis reverse KOM. So here we are turning into Jarvis, getting ready for the climb. We're gonna make a left here, go through the sprint segment. I was hoping that no one would wind up through the sprint segment. I've mentioned it in previous videos, but where there doesn't seem to be much point to it, unless I'm missing something, I've seen the sprint banners will often, or a lot of the times, get people to like surge through the sprint, which I never quite understood, but thankfully that didn't happen here. Right after the sprint banner, the climb is going to start. You'll see I'm starting to wind up the watts here just to get towards the front of the group and try to, as long as people aren't going too hard, try to stay up with them up the climb. In my current fitness, I theorized that I could probably sustain like 400 to 500 watts up this first part of the climb. The Jarvis reverse KOM is in two sections basically. You have this first one right here with some gentle gradient up into a short, steeper part, which is represented by the red on the map there at the top. And then there's a bit of a break and then another sort of gentle gradient before another sort of longer kick. So here I'm just going to stay with the front and be prepared to go up into the 500-ish watts to stay in. If I need to stand up on the pedals and switch to a harder gear, I'll do that, which you see me doing right there. As some people wind up over 7 watts a kilogram, so I'm up over 6 watts a kilogram here, 540 watts, briefly up at 600 there. And I do make it up this first section with the group. That took a bit out of me. Still relatively high cadence, but 312 watts after 15 minutes, and that was definitely a first little test that I'm now have to just quickly gear up and mentally prepare for this next little test here. Given how I stayed with the group on that first climb, I was confident that I could either just stay with the group on this second climb, you can see it stringing out here, or I hoped that if I lost anyone, I could regain them on the descent on the other side. Sometimes on this descent from Jarvis, people will keep the power up after the climb, which is a pretty good tactic for those who are kind of climbers that I am, which is I have, good high short-term power up the climb anyway, but I kind of spend it all on the climb. So you see me sitting down there, and if this group had done what I said some people do, you see me there trying to recognize and at least get a little bit of power back to stay with the group. But if they had done what I said people do, which is just keep it up over 4 or 5 watts a kilogram, I probably would have let that group go at this point. That's how much those little efforts will take out. And again, not knowing what kind of riders are in this group, I wasn't gonna try to chase someone that I had no business chasing anyway. So here we are, in the top 25 riders after 17 minutes and more than halfway through the ride. And I know there's couple little bumps here that I gotta stay with. So I use the power up here, knowing that once we get back out of the woods here, we go through another banner for a power-up opportunity. Like I've said in my previous few videos, and I still haven't done it with this one, I need to find a way to figure out all of the power-ups that are available for a given ride. I still don't know how or where to do that. Not that if I had known, I would have remembered to do it with this one. I don't think I was actually thinking of it. But I was hopeful that I didn't see any just experience boost power-ups. So I assumed you'd get a power-up at every opportunity, so that's why I used that arrow power-up there, the helmet power-up, just to stay with the group and make it through this section until I get another power-up. So here, after drafting with the group pretty well, saving my feather, I actually didn't realize that this climb was coming so soon. I realized it maybe 30 seconds before we made this left here, and so kind of had to quickly mentally prepare. And so at the beginning of this climb, I was feeling relatively good. I knew it was kind of a longish climb, again, from watching the YouTube video. But I figured I'm feeling good. I'm with most of the front group. I don't know how many or if any are off the front here, but again, with the group that I wanted to be with at the start of the climb. And I figure I'm gonna target around 350 watts, which is ambitious for having already done 310 watt average over 20 minutes. But I figure, you know what, I'll go for it. I've been climbing and riding and racing well recently, so I figured I'd just try to sustain it. I know it would be tough, but what am I here for if not to challenge myself? So that's where I am here. So you'll see me try to hover around this 350 watt range. I'm not too concerned with who's around me. If I can try to mark someone, then fine, but again, I need to stay in my own watts, and trying to yo-yo around with someone else's power is not in the right strategy for me to make it up this climb. I'm not racing that front group up this climb. I'm racing my own self at this point. And if I get towards the top, a couple, segments away, or one or two segments away from the front or from the summit, and I'm feeling strong, maybe I'll try to stay with some riders. But here I'm just trying to stay on the power. I'm feeling it at this point. You'll see me slowly start to go in the opposite direction of 350. You'll see when the wheels start to come off a little bit, but spoiler alert, I did do 347 watt average for this climb, so pretty much, on the mark. So here I'm using, my plan is to just use the power-ups before every segment banner there. Again, helpful to have seen the recon that's what the person I watched did. I'm going to use those until or unless I need to use it to either stick with a wheel or for some other reason. But for now, my strategy was just to try to use those for the maximum benefit. Or I guess that's not even maximum. Yeah, actually, you'll see me at one point use one when the gradient is highest, even if it's not right at the banner. I just wanted to make sure that I got an opportunity to get a new one at every turn. So there you can see a little bit of a blue section. That's the first kind of indication. I went down to 330 watts kind of for the first time. Got a little blue in the graph there. So this is where a little bit of mental weakness came in, knowing that, not mental, just realization that I think that was honestly the first time I questioned whether or not I was going to be able to hold this power average up this climb. So it's an interesting little tidbit. Another little blue section you can see there. Once those come, it's easy for your mind to let them continue to come. And so I'm trying to battle those demons at this point. I'm still able to, I'm at 70 RPM here, still able to keep on the power a little bit, but also having riders, again, I know I said I'm sort of riding my own race up this hill and not racing anyone else, but it's inevitable when people pass you that you kind of want to, it's like, there goes another one, there goes another one. So you can see me here not trying to stay with any of those riders. I'm letting them go, still staying within my 350 watt average. Drinking as often as I can. So I don't think I've talked about this previously, but I used to be very disciplined in how often I will drink. So just a word on my nutrition. So for this ride, actually, I'd forgotten to drink my nutrition in the normal time that I do. Usually I drink it somewhere between 15 to 10 minutes before the ride starts during the warm-up. This one I had the nutrition ready and waiting, but I just forgot to drink it until 3 minutes before the ride started. It's a relatively short ride, so I'm not sure how much that played a part. I used to be very disciplined in, and so that nutrition, by the way, is a carbohydrate powdered blend from the company Infinite Nutrition. And so we put 2 scoops of that blend in 20 ounces of cold water, and that's what I have during the warm-up. Well, that's what I had during the warm-up on this one. The nutrition can be different for different rides. I used to drink water, and in that red bottle you see me drinking is a bottle full of water. I used to drink water every 2.5 minutes religiously at one point for several months. That's how I was doing it. Now I'm not as strict, but I do try to drink every 2 minutes at least. I sweat a lot. So I'm in my garage there, and you would have seen at the beginning I had my sweater on because it was quite cold in there. The garage isn't insulated. It's, you know, right to the outside. Behind me at the door there is the outside, so it gets cold in there. There was one ride, speaking of sweating, it was a long ride, like a 4-hour ride I did in the garage or something. And I had a literal river of my sweat. The garage is sloped a little bit down towards the door back there. I had a literal river of sweat. Now, it wasn't flowing, right? But it made it so that... And I think the garage is like, I'm probably, 15 feet from the door. A little less, maybe. A stream of sweat made it from my bike all the way back to the door. That's how much I sweat. Now, it's a long ride, right? 4 hours. I think it was 4 hours that ride. Still, it just goes to show how much I'm sweating. I sweat from a lot from my head, my arms. I'm dripping all over the place. So I try to stay, the point is I try to stay hydrated. I usually have a headband on as well to help catch some of the sweat, and I had forgotten that as well in this ride. But so here we are, half hour in, 5 segments done. So we're in the second half here. This was a big turning point. You can see that the power is down, right? So I have a sustained section there on the graph where I went out of the orange and red and into the green and yellow. So it's starting to come off a little. Here I was actually considering whether or not I should back off like a lot more than this and recover a little bit and finish strong. But I decided I would just try to keep it at least around 320, try to still hit that 350 when I could. Now that this rider came up with me, I figured maybe I would try to stay with them. Again, if they were making moves that weren't conducive to my finishing strong, then I would just have let them go. But I did kind of use them as a bit of an anchor at this point, needing a little bit of something to rely on to get me through. So I'm still encouraged by my ride to this point. I think I've done pretty well. So I'm currently 32nd out of 305 riders in the group. And so I know at this point that whatever happens, I know I'm not going to DNF. Actually, more on that in just a few minutes. I know that I'm not going to like completely, or at least I assumed at this point with 3 segments to go that I wouldn't completely like fall off the wagon here. So I figured, let me just dial it back a little, maybe use these riders as a bit of a carrot, and just try to see if I can get back up towards that. This is a little break, and see if I get back up towards that. Or just see if I can have a good, strong finish at this point. So here we are coming into the home stretch, and I am planning to get back on the power here and try to finish strong. I can see the end in sight, see the blue section in the distance there, which represents the summit. At this point, I was seeing if I could maybe try to catch that rider in front of me, and currently in 34th place, as well as keep the rider 3 seconds behind me away. So I want you to take note of something here. I talked earlier about how the distance meter was bugged earlier, where it didn't show the distance. As you can see, it's completely gone away here, and I actually wasn't paying attention. I don't know if that happened just at the beginning of the climb or if it went away in the middle of the climb at some point. I'm not exactly sure. But here we are, 36th place, trying to get a strong finish here. Now I have a new rider behind to try to keep away. So just trying to give it a good surge to the end here, use all my power, empty the tank, and get it done. So as we go through the banner here, you'll notice what I'm doing here is I'm waiting for the results screen to show up. And I'm wondering, and I'm feeling it at this point. It was a really good climb for me. And it's interesting too, if you see there the Old Wullunga Hill on the left where it says 90-day PRs and it says no data, I'm thinking 2 things. Why don't I have data there as I just finished the climb? And why am I not seeing a results screen for the group ride? So I'm thinking, what is going on here? Eventually I think, oh, well, do I need to keep riding? So this is what I do. In case I needed to like go around this curve here and go back through the banner and start on the downhill. I don't remember the details of the rider that I watched on YouTube do this, so I thought maybe I just didn't realize that you had to keep going around. So that's what I'm doing here, just trying to go around and see if I assume at this point that must be it, right? Like, what else could it be? Why don't I have a result for the group ride? And actually, if you can see, I hadn't noticed at this point, you see the rider list, it says I'm 1 out of 300, I'm first place out of 305 of the Off the MAAP Stage 3. So there I go through the banner and I'm expecting a result screen. And there's nothing. And now I'm 2 out of 305. And I'm like, what is happening here? So I think I'm just trying to process it and figure out kind of what's going on, and then eventually I think, okay, maybe I need to go like all the way down the climb and go back through the beginning of the climb portal. So I figure, okay, maybe I'll do that. I'll use that as my cooldown and I'll ride back down the climb. Maybe, you know what I'm thinking actually is maybe no one realizes the reason I'm 2 is that all the other people that were in front of me, and this wouldn't make sense, right, are now behind me somehow and hadn't realized that they needed to do what I think I need to do at this point, which is go back down through the portal start. I'm like, okay, well, if that's a tactic to get second in this ride, then I'll do that. So I figure, all right, let me do that. And just watching the riders behind. There's one rider in front of me, or at least it says I'm in second, and there's supposedly one rider in front of me. So you'll see me go down the climb here, and I'll speed it up. And once we get to the bottom, you'll see that there is still no result screen. So here we are, I've gone through the portal start and I'm really confused now. And if you see that the fact that there's no result screen for me having finished the group ride, you can see that it still says I'm second place out of 305. I notice there's a rider behind me, and I also notice that, I see a rider in front of me and behind me, but when I notice the distance meter has come back on the top there where it says lap 1 of 1, and there's mostly a blue section towards the checkered flag. You can see that there's a little bit of a gray section left, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I got to finish it to that gray section. So here I'm just winding up and gonna do some consistent power to try to keep the rider behind away and just finish the ride in second. Figuring, okay, I guess a bunch of people didn't know that you got to go all the way down through downtown Watopia or something. So I'll speed it up and you'll see what happens once I get to the end of that distance marker. So as I approach the banner here, I realize that the end is not at this banner. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. So I think maybe one of those like custom gates is going to show up at the end of this banner, but I don't quite know when. It looks like maybe it's going to be up here around this left-hand bend, still keeping the power on to keep the rider behind away and finishing second. And you can see I'm almost at the end here, and I'm looking down the road and I'm like, where is this banner at? I just can't imagine where it would be. Like, this is an odd place to finish, right? So I see nothing, and at this point, the meter is full, as if I've completed this distance, but nothing's changed. And I'm thinking, what is going on? Maybe I don't see that there's still something left in that meter. So once I make this turn, you can see down the road there that there's another banner. That banner actually says off the map. So I'm like, oh, this is where it finishes. This is where I have to go to. So I'm going through and I'm like, all right, here we go. A lot of odd, very odd to have to finish here, but this has to be it. And so there we go. I take a snapshot and no results screen. And you can see my perplexed look here. So long story short, I rode for another 13 minutes in this state with the meter full, actually more than 13 minutes. I rode for until like an hour and 3 minutes or something. No results for the group ride. I actually ended up texting the rider in front of me, the Watt rider, Devyzed there. I may be messaging them right now in the in-game text messaging from the companion app. So I'm like, hey, are you done? Like, did you get a result here, or are you still like have as if you're still in the ride? And they're like, yeah, it's weird. I'm in the same boat as you, basically, is what they said. So long story short, I DNF'd this ride for some reason. I never got the credit for completing it, even though I went, I think, obviously, probably 30 minutes longer than I needed to just to try to get the distance. So I'm not exactly sure what happened. I don't think I'm going to do anything about it. It was a good ride. I think I may just complete the 3 stages of Off the Map officially. I'll probably just noodle through this route again. Maybe I'll noodle through the beginning of it and put in another effort on the climb portal, but there we are. So good ride here. I'll speed up the video through my meandering and winding down and trying to figure out if I can get credit for the ride. And you'll see at the end, pretty good effort considering. Really good climb, actually. Like I said, 347 watt average for that climb, so pretty happy with that. I actually don't know what the time was because it didn't tell me the time, either in the 90-day PRs or like at the top of the climb where it usually gives you your stats. But another good ride. Please consider liking, comment, let me know if you had any similar issues, if you know what the issues might have been with this. Subscribe if you're so inclined. I appreciate it, and I will talk to you all later on the next analysis video.